My mom would write him letters saying how much she missed him while he was in jail. And after she had passed, I had took some of these letters and I cut up all the words and I wrote a letter to me saying what I wanted her to say. Like it says, I love you so much. I miss you, baby. But I wanted her to, I wanted her to write to me. I wanted her to love me.
Absolutely.
I wanted her to pick me.
Yeah.
But she never did.
Let's be honest about recovery.
The rewards, the challenges.
Let's talk about our failures. We are flawed people, after all.
Let's challenge the stigmas that weigh us down.
Because while most of us are looked at,
few of us are seen.
Let's talk about addiction.
And how Christ overcomes our weaknesses.
Because we are loved.
Because we are loved.
Because we are loved.
We are loved.
We are
Because we are loved.
My name is Emily Ellsworth. I'm 29. I lost my mom when I was 13. She did lose the battle to her addiction. I want to make it my mission to take what the enemy meant for evil. I know God can use it for good, and this is my story.
Hey there, and welcome back to Jesus Loves Addicts. I'm Kathryn, and this is Paul. Today, we are going to be speaking with Emily Ellsworth. I'm so sorry. Emily Ellsworth is a wife and mother of two. She is also a self-published author that we're going to hear more about. At 13, Emily lost her mother to the battle of addiction, and this caused her to be split from her sisters. Today, we're going to hear from her on her road to forgiveness and the challenges of overcoming her childhood trauma.
And I am so excited about this episode, Emily, because it's a really necessary perspective that we have touched on, but we've never really had the opportunity to delve into. So you are strictly going to be coming at this from a child of an addict's perspective, right? You did not have your own addiction. Is that true?
That is true.
Okay. So this is wonderful. And thank you so much for being here. So, I guess one of my curiosities is, at what age does a child in that situation think, something is not right?
I feel like I probably lost my childhood very early. We had a relatively normal childhood until I was in 4th grade and my mom had another baby, and that baby didn't make it. And that kind of began her tailspin down the rabbit hole of drugs and alcohol. And from that point, that's when she started drinking. We were raised in church. We were going to church. My mom was teaching Sunday school. On the surface, it was very much, we were okay. My family, my grandma, and I don't think my extended family knew how bad it was at home. I don't think they knew what was going on.
And that's all prior to 4th grade and the loss of the baby?
4th grade and on. And that's when it started to get really bad, because growing up, we never wore pants. We never we didn't drink alcohol. We didn't do that kind of thing. And so
in some ways, a very old-fashioned, rigid version of, okay.
Yeah. And so, when she was drinking, she was married. She was married to what I thought was my dad. I didn't realize he wasn't my dad for a long time, but he did adopt me. And when she finally died, he just took my sisters and he didn't want me. Actually, when I was 18, I saw some of my court papers. He had said in the trial, which I didn't remember, but he said he never loved me as a daughter. So I did think he was my dad, but he was not.
So to go back to where this started then, this really was a grief issue for your mom, losing the second child. And then so this started.
I think that was the straw that broke the camel's back.
Okay.
She had trauma in her childhood that was unresolved, undealt with. She had some sexual trauma that had happened to her.
So even preceding. Okay.
Yeah,
So
when
it's
she was a
series
child. So she just never dealt with that. And then once she lost the baby, she couldn't come back. And it probably had to do with postpartum depression.
Sure.
That was the catalyst for that. But basically unresolved trauma, unhealed, not going to counseling, and maybe not even knowing. You know, I think mental health
wasn't talked about.
It wasn't what it is now.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
So you mentioned, you know, prior to that being raised in a very old-fashioned kind of, was it old-fashioned and strict to the point of discomfort, or would it feel loving and normal and homey until that point?
Yeah. So it's an apostolic Pentecostal background, and I'm still involved in the church. We still go. I feel that the church was my sanctuary. The church was my safe place. The church was my constant. You know, my mom may have been passed out burning cigarette holes in our couch, but I knew where I could go on Sunday.
And it would be the same.
It would be the same. The same people, the same safe place.
Yeah.
It may not have been safe at home, but it was safe at the church.
You mentioned you've got sisters. How many of y'all are there?
There's 3 of us. The youngest one I still haven't seen since all that. So I want to say she was 6 months when my mom died, 6 months old. The last one, she had fetal alcohol syndrome. So I think that there's some developmental issues, but I don't know her. I don't even know that she knows who I am,
right?
Quite honestly. But my middle sister, we're, I think, 5 years apart. We reconnected not too long ago, 2 years ago. Maybe we reconnected finally.
In that reconnection, have you had the freedom to discuss? Have you guys gone back and discussed all this? Is that?
So when Matt, my stepdad, when he took the girls, he didn't raise them in church. I was able to stay in the church. I was able to go with my grandma around that time. The reason I wasn't able to stay with my grandma is because my mom's sister, my aunt, she was also doing drugs. She got in trouble with the law and went to prison. So when my grandma took my aunt's 4 children, there just really wasn't enough room in the house for me also. So my mom's brother, my uncle, him and his wife, they have a tomato business. And so I used to go work with them, and I thought that was so fun. And I was just spending a lot of time with them. They were the youth leaders at my church, and I really liked them. And one day they said, do you want to come live with us? And so I did. I think at the time I felt like I was passed around. Yeah. But,
How old were you at that time?
Around middle school, 7th, 8th grade.
Okay. About how long after your mom had passed? You were 13 when your mom died?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, it was all a very short process. My aunt went to prison right before my mom died. And so it was with my grandma, not for very long. And then I finally went with my aunt around that same year my mom died.
And did that become permanent?
Yep. I stayed with my aunt and uncle, my mom's brother and his wife. I stayed with them until I graduated college. And I think when I was in my college years is when I struggled to, I always felt like no one loved me. Like I felt that my mom cared more about alcohol than she did me. I felt like, I didn't have a dad, and the stepdad that I had, apparently he didn't love me.
He didn't want you. Yeah.
He didn't want me. And I didn't think that bothered me, but I so badly wanted a boyfriend. I always wanted a boyfriend, and I never could find a boyfriend. I never could get one to like me. And I think I scared him off because I was, obsessive.
Were looking for attention that wasn't there.
Yes. Yeah. I was very desperately looking for attention. That's the only thing that I cared about. One thing that's really humiliating to admit, and I don't know if I should admit this, and maybe you can cut it out, but I had said one time at my mom's funeral that maybe someone else needs to die because this boy that I liked, he had hugged me at the funeral. And I just wanted to feel a man's embrace. So in my college years, that came out where I just needed to find a man that loved me. Yeah. And so I had talked to this guy for a year, and he had promised that, he would be my first kiss, and that didn't work out. And so one day he left me a voicemail saying that he just doesn't think this is going to work. And from that point, I found somebody else that I didn't know, and I had lost my virginity at that time. I was 19, and I felt disgusting. I felt so much shame. I thought my aunt and uncle would kick me out. I thought that, because they were in the church, that this was just the worst thing that I could have done. And I felt like for all those years, I thought I was so much better than my mom, because I'm still in church and I'm doing this. And I maybe thought that I was self-righteous. And here I was doing the same thing that I was mad at her about, when she would have affairs on my stepdad, or, she was very promiscuous. She was very not faithful to my dad, and me and my sisters were there for that. They probably don't remember that, but
you do.
We would go, meet men. Sometimes we would
with
visit.
Your mom. Mm-hmm. Let me pause you for just a minute. And in no way would we cut that out. I'm super grateful for your vulnerability, but we got there really fast.
I'm sorry.
So for somebody out there who might be going, how did that evolve? Let's go back to fourth grade, right? Because you don't go from fourth grade to craving attention that badly without the years we just missed.
Yep.
And that's important to understand, right? Yep. You came by that desire honestly. So we're going to, let's take a look at what that looked like getting there. So was your mom affectionate before she started drinking, or was she never kind of a very affectionate mother? Do you recall?
My mom was really angry. She was very...
Even prior to the alcohol?
Yeah. Even though we were normal in the fact that she wasn't an addict, we always she dressed us nice, or what we thought was nice. And she would max out her credit cards. And as a kid, you just think that we're just rich. I always thought I was rich.
Yeah.
And she would buy us new clothes at Gymboree or Children's Place. And so I used to tell the other kids in my class that we had so much money. And we lived in this little dinky house, but as a kid, you don't know.
Yeah.
So appearance was very important to you.
Yeah. We always were late for church because she wanted everybody to see our outfits. So we always would come in late. And so other, girls at church, my mom would say, they're ugly. They shop at Goodwill. We don't do that.
And I'd say appearances, but also needing to be seen.
I mean, her and my stepdad, they fought very badly. And then once she started drinking, it got even worse. And I mean,
did they fight about money prior to drinking?
They fought about everything. She was very angry. She may have been bipolar. A lot of screaming, a lot of yelling, a lot of wrestling. I mean, I'm holding against the wall, screaming. She would, spit in his face. She was very disrespectful to him.
So very volatile.
Mm-hmm.
So she starts drinking when you're in fourth grade. How long does that take to get out of control? I'm guessing from the picture you're painting, it didn't take long.
So her addiction was 4 years total. So 4 years she ruined her liver. She died of liver failure. Very much drinking.
Okay.
A lot of drinking all day.
And the two that your mother and father who were fighting, I know that wasn't your biological father.
Right. And I thought he was. I called him my dad.
Did you ever meet your biological father?
I did in 2016.
All right, let's pause because we're going to get there. Then that's good. So, so when did your mom and stepfather divorce after she started down this journey?
Yes. So the drinking, when I was in fifth grade, she burnt down her house. She was making cheese sticks. I mean, her drinking was out of control. Matt worked second shift, And so that's when it would really get bad. When he would leave for work, me and my sisters would be at home, and, she would pass out on the couch and there would be cigarette holes all over. One time her face fell in like the ranch and French fries. And maybe that's why I don't like ranch now.
That's actually very possible.
Possibly. My 2-year-old sister, she would make her own bottle. She would put milk in the bottle. I have a really hard time with expiration dates now, because I remember as a kid eating this cheese in the fridge, and I just said, it's okay, just eat around the mold. It'll be okay.
Yeah.
And so, like my grandma, and I don't think my extended family realized what we were. I mean, we were in the we were in the trenches.
Yeah.
That, and one time in the Village Inn, she had passed out in the waiting area, and the cops would take us home. We would go to Walmart, and she would dance around the aisles. And I remember like kicking her, trying to bite her arm, because I was angry too. I was angry that why am I mothering you? I'm in 5th grade. I'm 10. I'm 11.
Yeah.
I need you to wake up. We got to get out of the store. We need to go home. I have school tomorrow. I have a spelling test,
Yeah.
And I remember being so angry at other kids because they would have a baseball game, and I was making bottles and taking care of my sister and helping my mom get to her bed, and we're at the Walmart checkout line. I don't know why the cashiers would let us leave the way that she was, because she was very clearly drunk. And I would tell them I had such a strong faith as a child, and maybe I lost it in adulthood, but as a child, I was so trusting in God. I would tell the cashiers, God is going to get us home. I would say, it's okay, because they'd be like, is your mom okay to drive? And I'd be like, yeah, God will get us home. And so there was a lot of times where my mom I think she took sleeping pills too. And so she would fall asleep at the wheel, and she'd be like, dozing off. And I'd be like, just crying, just wake up, please, just wake up. We need to get home. And I would help her push the gas pedals. And that carried into my adulthood, because I didn't get my driver's license until college. I was pretty traumatized from driving. I was so scared to drive, because the last time I drove, I was
a child,
very young. In driver's ed, my driver's ed teacher I think he was very annoyed with me, because I would always start crying, which is really embarrassing.
But there's understanding, right? And see, already we get some insight into that need for attention, right? Because at this young, tender age where you need that from mom, you're mothering, right? You became invisible pretty quickly in that role, right? By the way, I'm going to use this as the first plug for your book, because I had the opportunity to read this before she started speaking, right? It's called Hey Mommy, Emily Ellsworth. And many of the stories that you just heard her talking about really bring this to life. I was just trying to see, right, here's one of them, right? Hey, Mommy, why did the cashier say we couldn't leave the store yet? She looked really worried. I told her it's okay. You will sleep it off. So these are illustrated and written by Emily, and really a self-portrait of what Emily's childhood looked like. So that really brings it to life as I hear you kind of telling these stories. Yeah. So 4 years. Wow. That is a quick demise.
It was bad.
Yeah. So how long into that before Dad leaves?
So 5th grade, she burnt down our house, and it was, gone. Everything was destroyed. And that is when I went to go stay with my grandma, because I wanted to stay in my same school. They were going to live in a hotel. The insurance was going to pay for that. And so 5th grade is when I went to stay with my grandma. And then finally, when I went to go stay with my aunt, that was 7th grade. So I was with my grandma for 2 years, and then my aunt from 7th grade to college.
Okay.
When they went to stay in the hotel and you went to live with your grandmother, was it your dad, your mom, and your sisters?
Yep. Just the one sister.
The one.
Because the next one.
Okay.
I don't actually think that youngest one is his, even though they were married at that time. I don't know for sure. So I don't want to like slander him, but nobody knows for sure.
Such is addiction, right? I mean, you said she was very promiscuous. It's part of the lifestyle.
She was very, very, very beautiful. Yeah. Breathtakingly beautiful. Nothing like me.
So you mentioned she would take you. Yeah, you're beautiful too. So she would take you to these men's house, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Did she, because this is something I've heard people talk about, did she enlist your secrecy? Like, was this, when that happened, did she say, don't tell Dad? Was there?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, because they were married. And she had one boyfriend that we really liked. He was so rich. He worked at John Deere, and he was an engineer. And I don't know if he'll see this, but we always wanted that to work out. I don't know how we got away with it. We went to Thanksgiving at his family's in Ohio. Like, we went on a whole trip while she was still married to my dad. And so this was like a big secret. And one of the other guys she was with, when Matt was working second shift, like, we would take Matt lunch on his break. And so she would, sleep with some of those guys from his work. One of the guys' name was Steve. So if he's watching, I remember.
Where were y'all when these were? I know that she brought you, but because y'all were like a cover for her.
Yeah.
So where were y'all?
Banging on the door.
At the different houses she would go to?
Yeah. If they'd be in the bedroom, I'd be like throwing my Barbies at the door. I could hear what was going on.
Yeah.
So intimacy was really traumatic for me that I found out when I got married. When I got married and I tried to have real intimacy, I would just burst into tears.
Yeah.
And so I've had to really unpack a lot of things that had happened. And I do think there was some abuse that I've uncovered in counseling. And some of it I think is repressed because I told her I can't remember, but there's some things that will bring me to tears that it is so hard to get past. And she had told me, one of my counselors had told me that if your brain is protecting you from that, leave it alone.
Let it
be. You don't need to remember everything.
Yeah. I mean, you remember enough.
I'd like to take a moment to recognize a major podcast sponsor. Today's episode is brought to you by America's Thrift Stores, your go-to option for decluttering and giving back. You have a closet bursting at the seams or a garage that's seen better days? We've got the perfect solution for you.
That's right. America's Thrift Stores makes it easy to clear out the clutter and make a positive impact in your community. Whether you are cleaning out your wardrobe, downsizing your living space, or just looking to give back, America's Thrift Stores has you covered.
And here's the best part. You've got options. Schedule a hassle-free home pickup, drop off your items at one of their convenient donation sites, or swing by an America's Thrift Store to donate in person. No matter which way you choose, you're making a difference.
Every donation you make to America's Thrift Stores directly benefits charities in your area, such as the Home of Grace and other fantastic organizations dedicated to helping those in need.
For example, donations made to America's Thrift Stores in southern Mississippi help the Home of Grace provide support and assistance to individuals facing drug and alcohol addiction. Your contributions make a real impact on their mission to provide freedom from addiction through Christ-centered recovery. So, not only are you decluttering your life, but you're also helping build a stronger and more supportive community.
It's truly a double blessing, so what are you waiting for? Clean out that closet, clear out that garage, and make a positive difference in your community by donating to America's Thrift Stores.
Visit America's Thrift Stores online to schedule a home pickup, locate a donation site near you, or get directions to one of their store locations.
America's Thrift Stores, where giving back never goes out of style.
So were you, without getting past that zone of protection, were you put in unsafe situations, like in these other men's homes, like when she would be there? I mean, I would imagine there would have been.
I never felt they would have never hurt us or touched us.
Okay. Well, good. So 13 is when you lose your mom.
Mm-hmm.
What's that year like leading up to that? What's happening there?
Well, I had been with my aunt and uncle, my mom's brother. I'd been with them not too long, and I don't know that my mom knew that I went with them. She was always so jealous of my mom or my uncle's wife that he married. She was so jealous of her, and so we didn't want to tell her that I was staying
Living
there
there.
because I think it would have broke her heart even more. And she was a very sad drunk. She would cry a lot. She cried after she had lost that baby. She would weep and hold. She bought this baby doll that looked like a baby. She would hold that. She just would cry a lot. When she delivered that last baby, that's when the state stepped in because she was drunk when she delivered that last baby, the youngest one, Courtney. She was drunk. And so the state finally said, we got to see what's going on. So we got a caseworker. And I was living with my aunt at the time. My sisters were with Matt. And I became a ward of the state at that point. And so, like, if I needed to go to the dentist, the caseworker would have to, like, approve it or go, or just a lot of hoops for anything that I needed to do at that point.
Was that just you or your sisters too, even though they were with Matt?
Just me, because they technically had a parent, because Matt claimed both of them.
Okay.
So I never saw them after that. So they're just out of my life. They're gone pretty much.
Did you see your mom before she died?
That last year she was in and out of rehab. She would, do the 30-day or whatever. She would detox, or sometimes we would go visit her. Like, my caseworker would be able to take me. We only could do supervised visits. One of our supervised visits, she tore the blinds down at the office because she was drunk when she got there, and they said, you can't see us. So she was like angry, and I'm going to tear off these blinds.
I'm going to show y'all.
Yeah. So, I don't know why, but they also wanted us to do supervised visits with Matt. I think that they thought that maybe we were more of a family than we were. So those were really awkward. So my caseworker would take me to Matt's, place where he lived with my sister. So I did see them a few times, but they were so young.
Yeah.
They were 5 and a baby.
Yeah. So you mentioned that your mom had been in and out of rehabs. What was that like from the child's perspective? Because in my head, this is what I'm thinking. It feels like I'm about to get mom back, and then she's snatched away again by addiction. I'm about to get mom back, and then is that the roller coaster ride?
Yeah, I always believed that she could get better. Mm-hmm. I always believed that she could do it, because sometimes she would even come to church and she would, I thought she would repent, and I thought, this would just be fine. She would just be fine. And then she would go back down and she would have a near-death experience, need to get detox, be fine, near-death. That whole year was like that.
Just cycling.
Yeah. She did get with a man who really beat her pretty badly.
And you were witness to that?
I never saw that. I just saw when we would see her, she would, her hand would be broken and her.
You saw the evidence of it.
Yeah. But I never saw, the only violence I saw was when her and Matt were fighting years ago.
As a child, did you ask her about that when her hand's broken?
I mean, we all knew who it was. He had ended up going to jail, thankfully.
For that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. So what was really frustrating to me is she would write him letters. His name was Bryce. She would write him letters saying how much she missed him while he was in jail. And after she had passed, I had took some of these letters and I cut up all the words, and I wrote a letter to me saying what I wanted her to say. And so then I laminated it. And so I have this letter that's like Mod Podge together. Like, it says, I love you so much. I miss you, baby. Because she's writing to like this piece of garbage boyfriend,
but not
but I wanted her to, I wanted her to write to me. I wanted her to love me.
Absolutely.
I wanted her to pick me.
Yeah.
but she never did.
She never did. Went to the grave that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when she died, it was liver failure.
Yeah.
And you were living with your aunt and uncle?
Yeah.
A lot of times people say they remember the day that they were told. What was that like?
Well, she had nearly died multiple times, so we didn't realize that she was actually going to die. So the last time that this had happened, I was at my friend's house, and they had to come pick me up in the middle of the night and said, "Your mom's going to die. You need to come say your goodbyes." Well, she didn't die. So when this time happened, I was working at the farm. It was on Thursday. It was a pick day. We were picking tomatoes, and they were like, "We got to go to the hospital." And I might have had something going on. I was going to camp, or I don't know. I didn't want to go to the hospital. She wasn't going to die. She was fine.
Yeah.
And she was not fine. And so we had stayed at the hospital all night. Nothing happened. So maybe 2, 3 in the morning, we left the hospital and we stopped at Taco Bell. And then my grandma said, "You really have to go back right now." And so on our way back, my uncle called and said she breathed in and never breathed out.
How old was she?
She was 31.
Wow.
So I'm 29. So I was always scared when I turned 27 that I always thought that I was going to be like her, especially when I really let myself down when I got involved with that first experience. I don't know how consensual it was because it was kind of a random situation and it wasn't like an ongoing thing, and it wasn't a very fun experience, and I was just crying. And I wanted it to be over.
Yeah.
And so I moved out of my aunt and uncle's house after college, and I still wasn't emotionally healed. I still was very angry. I still was very bitter. And I don't even know that I knew that. Maybe I just didn't have an understanding. Maybe I was immature. But I got involved with an older man that I should not have got involved with. And I think in my heart, I wasn't living for God. And I was so angry with myself because I was doing the same thing my mom was doing. Maybe I wasn't drinking, but I was living in sin. I was on the surface, I looked like I was fine, but in my heart, you
knew it wasn't.
It was not. And even though I had a good excuse or a good reason, the word of God, it's not. I don't get to use my bad upbringing to justify my sin. I don't get to say, well, it's fine. I just was looking for love, because that's not.
Perhaps, but it is a reality, right? That is true. We don't get to use it as an excuse, but it is a reality.
Yeah.
And thank God we serve a merciful God. I want to ask you something. I'm going to bring you right back to this point. But Kathryn had asked you about the day your mother died, and you were not there because at that time it just seemed like, hey, another false call. So she does die. I'm just curious, do you have any feelings of guilt about not being there? Did you feel like anything about that? Because
maybe I wish I would have said something, but my mom knew that I loved her. She knew I did love her. Even though I was mad, I loved her a lot. I wanted her to not die.
Yeah.
I really didn't think she would die.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was really caught off guard. I just had my cheesy bean and rice burrito, and you find out your mom's dead.
Yeah.
Well, and by the way, I didn't ask that in hopes that the answer was yes. I was in hopes that the answer was no. So I'm glad that you don't carry any, guilt about that. Oftentimes people do, but it's a false guilt. So I'm glad that that's not something you wrestle with. That part is good. So coming back then to your own.
Skip.
Oh, yeah.
In the book, this is the line that had caught me when I got emotional before. When your mom died and you weren't even living with her, but hey, Mommy, the funeral home asked me to do your hair. They said they didn't know how to do a messy bun the way that you like. And then you told us beforehand that you did do your mother's hair for her service.
Yep.
What was that like?
Well, I was glad to see her again. I wanted to see her again. She looked better than when she did in the hospital. In the hospital, she looked really, really rough. So she looked a lot better on the table. It was kind of weird seeing, because she didn't have any clothes on. She was just on a metal slab. And so we have really long hair. And my mom, I don't know if she cut her hair, but it was very long, past her hips. And kind of like this is kind of how she wanted it. And whenever she was drunk, she always joked and said, "Don't give me a poof." And so I always said I was going to give her a poof because that's what I want. And you never do what I want. So when you're dead, I'll do it. But I didn't realize that would actually happen.
Yeah.
So I can't remember if I poofed it up or not. But she didn't want this. Yeah. But I did it anyways, probably. I really don't remember, but
I feel like you might have.
I probably did. So I picked out her outfit. I picked out a zebra jacket and I picked out a pink coffin. And I don't know, everybody just let me pick everything. I don't know.
Were you kind of the caretaker throughout this whole process as much as maybe there was? Like, were your other sisters sort of too young to do it?
Yeah. I mean, they were infant or 6 months or
and you were young too, but I mean, as much as any of you could be there.
I was 13. Yeah. I felt old at that time.
Sure.
I didn't feel like a kid anymore.
Well, emotionally you were.
Yeah. You hadn't been a kid in a long time.
Yeah.
No. But I remember we picked the flowers and like the ribbons that go over the stuff. I did end up keeping a piece of her hair, which I didn't want to because I didn't want to cut her hair because I don't cut my hair, but they said it would be fine.
Yeah.
And it's just funny the things that I thought was important when I was a child.
Yeah.
Well, it's something of her you get to keep, right? Mm-hmm. And there wasn't much of that.
No.
So I want to bring you back to, I told you I'd bring us back to where you were. I didn't mean to, but because you're very boldly talking about your own struggles with dealing with things. And you said something that is really profound. You said, at this time, you are your mom, right? You're saying, here I am, but I am. Do you think, did sex become maybe kind of an addiction for you? Did that become an addiction in itself?
I would painfully say that that's true.
Yeah. Yeah. And it does, right? So, one of the things at the core of addiction is that we use whatever that is, fill in the blank, to cope self-destructively, right? We're trying to cope, but we don't realize that we're doing it self-destructively. And so I appreciate that admission, right? That so there was an addiction in your life. It just wasn't drugs and alcohol.
And he was married.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not to me.
Yeah. I got you. Yeah.
And that was really hard. I had a lot of shame and a lot of guilt
over that.
Mm-hmm. And
did that play a part? Because you mentioned earlier too something. You said that you were very faithful as a young girl, and you said I probably walked away from that when I was an adult. Is this what you're referring to?
Yes. And that time of my life, I was still going to church. I was still serving in the church, but secretly I had this, double life, because he was from my job. Nobody from the church knew him. Nobody knew about this. This was just something that
it was your double life.
Yeah.
Literally.
And now what I want to do now with my book, with my story, is I want to be emotionally healthy. I want God. It's easy to say you can fill the void with God, but to actually do the work and to actually put God in there, that is two different things. I can say till I'm blue in the face that I'm going to fill God in the void, but to actually put God in the void, that is a whole different ball game.
Yeah.
And I'm not perfect. I wouldn't say that I'm completely emotionally healthy now, but that's what I want. And I want my kids to know me as a mom who prays, not a mom who passes out.
Yeah.
I want my kids to know that I'm a mom that talks to my husband and not screams at my husband.
Yeah.
Because in the early part of our marriage, I was not the best wife. And I was very disrespectful and very mirroring kind of how my mom treated her husband.
Were you
What
angry?
you had been saying. Or what you had seen.
I was angry. And so when I got pregnant with my child is when my journey of counseling began. And I went every week for 2 years. I really had to unpack a lot of that.
Well, I want to say, I know that you're identifying that it's two different things, but what you're demonstrating, and that's what you'll also teach your children, that it's okay to be willing to do the work. If we're not completely healthy, these are the things we can do to get there, that there's no shame and guilt in that. The shame and guilt comes when we're unwilling to do anything, to say, hey, look, I'm sick. I'm emotionally sick. Mentally, I've got some things I need to unpack. I need to work through, and I don't know how to do that, but I'm willing to do it. And you just said every day or every week for 2 years. That's somebody that's willing to do the footwork.
And I'm still not perfect. I'm still not. I'm not going to counsel anymore because I've said all there is to say.
Yeah,
but
you're still doing work.
The Lord's still working on me because I haven't arrived.
Yeah, none of us.
This side of heaven, we're just on the journey of arrival, right? So we never arrive till we're there. But thank God He's with us. So, but you mentioned there's another thing that unfortunately dysfunctional parents pass on, and here's right. You're going into your own marriage now the same way your mom lived, which was angry, right?
Yes.
You have your own anger at the past. So you've talked about doing a lot of counseling. How do you feel like you have resolved or are in the process of resolving some of that? What's been your journey to?
I've read a lot of books based on like things that my counselor has told me to read, or, watch these podcasts, watch these people's experience. And what my personal revelation has been like, bitterness is unresolved unforgiveness. So I heard this guy, he was a med student, talking about plaque in the arteries and how like the blubbery fat becomes hard fat and it becomes plaque. And I felt like God gave this to me, that bitterness is hardened unforgiveness. And it's like, instead of that blubbery unforgiveness, it becomes bitter. And so I was bitter, even though I didn't think that I was.
Yeah.
I was bitter. I was bitter about my mom. I was bitter about
your dad
not having a dad. I was bitter when I lived with my aunt and uncle, and I felt like they loved their kids more than me. And they didn't even do anything that would make me think that, but I perceived what I wanted to perceive.
Yeah.
And I saw what I wanted to see, and I saw, well, they don't love me because I'm not their kid.
Yeah.
And that wasn't even true. And I was mad, maybe I didn't want to stay with my grandma, but maybe I was mad that I couldn't stay there too.
Yeah.
I probably didn't want to stay there because her house was tiny.
Not wanting to stay there, but feeling that you're the one that has to leave.
Felt passed around.
I don't have a place.
And not getting to see my sisters. I never felt like I had my own family.
Yeah.
I really wanted my own family. I really wanted a husband. I always wanted a husband. I always wanted a boyfriend. I always wanted something that was my own.
Yeah.
Well, when we talked about the need for attention because of the void of it in your childhood, but then, as a female, right, that need for a boyfriend or husband because you always lacked that father figure, right? So there's this dual absence growing up that you're seeking all the more. So the process of softening your heart, what did that look? I'm really curious about that, right? Because again, here we have the privilege of having it from the family side. So what was the process of that softening of your heart, moving from a place of anger to a place of recognizing Mom was broken, people are broken. I don't need, it wasn't an intentional thing at me that she was doing. She was broken, right?
Yeah.
And so what was that process for you of coming to that understanding?
I think it's literally a daily a daily, God create in me a clean heart and renew a right spirit within me. Like, search me, know the hidden thing, know if there's people that I don't like, get that out of me. I don't want that. Whoever I may hate or have ill feelings towards, reveal that to me. And if I do have those feelings, I have to go to them.
Yeah.
And anybody that I've, hurt or has hurt me, I've went to them and hashed it out because I'm confrontational. So I will confront you and the issue. And I do have, maybe it's a flaw, but I should get more embarrassed at times, but I don't. I'm known to be blunt and I'm known to be bold. And sometimes I wish that I had more embarrassment. But yeah, going to people that have hurt you, that's very important. Which in my mom's case, maybe symbolically, I've gone to her grave and I've said these things. Like I've said, I feel, and she can't hear me, but maybe symbolically, if, the person that you need to talk to is gone, you could go there. They're not going to hear you, but for your own sake, for you to say those words, I forgive you.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Prior to getting there, were you ever able to express your anger toward her? I'm sure that never.
No.
You're never.
Just, kicking her in the Walmart, when she's passed out.
Yeah.
And she wouldn't even know that I was angry because she wasn't in her right mind.
Right.
For the 4 years that.
Yeah. So working through then, you have this anger that you never get to vent toward the recipient of it, right? Which there's no sin in anger, right? It says be angry, but don't let the sun go down, all right? So we can be angry. That's just a crossroads.
Yeah.
What do we do with that now?
Right.
And then I like how you describe bitterness, right? That's that anger we refuse to let go of.
Mm-hmm.
But somehow you have let go of it. Somehow you've gotten to that place. Or maybe I'm going too far. Maybe I like what you said. Day to day, you have to remind yourself to let go of another piece. Is that accurate? Is that still where you are? Or do you feel like that's behind you?
All the things about my mom, I think that's, year 2008, I think was like 16 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So I've had a really long time to work through that, to pray about that. The things that I get angry about, myself feeling like a failure for
the things that you do,
the things that I do, even now as a wife.
Well, I want to also, something came to mind. When we talked about you being willing to go to counseling, something you said in the beginning, though, that's you doing something that your mother never did, whether that's the time period she was brought up,
right?
Whether she didn't know to ask for help, whether she chose to stay angry. And yeah, she died in her addiction for that.
Mm-hmm.
But you said something in the beginning. You're like, my mother she didn't go to counseling. She was an unhealed person and she had trauma that she never looked at, never dealt with.
Yes.
Even not knowing the things that you would face, you were willing to do something different to make sure that you weren't your mother.
Yes. And I needed her to do those things.
Yes.
And she felt like such a big failure that my family's just going to be better off without me. Emily would be better off without me. My mom would be better off without me. As in her mom, and my grandma did not handle that very well. She cried. She cries all the time, even now. My grandpa, he didn't handle that well. He, a few years ago, just got out of his rehab program. I think that so unfortunately, when my grandma took all those kids, my grandpa fell back into drinking after my mom died. I don't think he handled that very well either.
Yeah.
He ended up going to prison. He got in trouble with the law. And so my grandpa and my aunt were in prison. And so my grandma, the kids, there's just
was a lot all on your mom's side.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So thankfully he was able to go to prison. Thankfully, he was able to get clean.
Is he home now?
Yeah, he's home. He's been clean. I don't know how long it's been. I think I was pregnant when he went to the rehab. So it's been 3 years and he's doing very good. The rehab that he went to, they really do a lot of counseling. It was a 1-year program.
Okay.
And he really got to his root causes why he was self-medicating, why. Yeah. And there's no such thing as a lost cause. I mean, you're 60 years old going to rehab. Like, you're not too old to get sober.
Yes.
You're not too old to get healed for your family.
I love that.
My aunt, she's clean now.
How long does she have?
She's been a lot longer. 2019, since 2019, so almost 6 years. So if those people who have been in the lowest of the lows, I mean, you could have found her at a crack house. I mean, she didn't have a place to live at times. She went to prison. Like, she lost her kids. You would think that, you know, her kids would want nothing to do with her. You would think
that there was no hope for her.
Right. You would think that there's no hope because you've destroyed every relationship, but really that's in your head. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying enable an addict.
Right.
I'm not saying that, but when they are healed, I have no reason not to forgive you. How can I sit here and hold that over you? Yeah. You know, your sin is no different than my sin. Your consequences are different, and you're dealing with those consequences. You're going to prison. Yeah. You've already paid for your sins. You don't need to keep paying me. You don't need to keep asking for my forgiveness.
I've already
my forgiveness. It's just like God's forgiveness. I don't have to keep asking you. I don't have to keep saying, God, please forgive me, forgive me, forgive me. One and done.
Yeah.
And I have to exhibit that to my family members.
While we're on the topic of forgiveness, and I love that, Kathryn, that you point out, because we talked about some of the similarities between you and your mom. But then Kathryn points out this important dissimilarity, right? Where you had the courage to step into counseling, and perhaps your mom did, and I don't want to say it's courage, whatever. She was broken in different ways, right? But you talk about being able to forgive her. Have you fully forgiven yourself? Because there's a lot of shame and stuff that you put on yourself through your own journey of addiction, right? Through what we just discussed. Have you been able to fully forgive yourself and let yourself off the hook and receive that?
I want to say yes, but I do feel some shame, you know, when I admit some of the things that I have done. But even, I don't know how to answer that. I don't want to feel shame. I don't want to feel, because like I said, it's a one and done, like God can forgive me. Right. It's a lot harder to
forgive yourself.
It's a lot easier to say, well, God can do that for them. God can do that.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And it's harder when God can do that for me. God can forgive me. And I always say, like, there's nothing can separate you from the love of Jesus, but it's hard when it's yourself. Like, it's hard when it's you, when you're the one that's struggling. And mine, it may not be, you know, alcohol, but it may be shame.
Yeah.
Like that, I'm putting that shame. If there's a separation between me and God, I'm putting that there. Yeah. I put that shame between us. God didn't put that there. Yeah. I put that on me. But no, I shouldn't have that.
Yeah.
That's one thing I probably need to work through.
Yeah, you know, I would encourage that, because that is oftentimes one of the last things to go. And one way I might encourage you, because it sounds like you have a great ability to love others, even those who have hurt you, right? To be able to forgive your mom and those kinds of things. And you said that beautifully, right? It's often easy to say God's forgiven you. Mm-hmm. But then when it's me, that can become a little harder to take. But if I'll remind you, you know, when Jesus was asked what the great commandment was, it was to love God with all your heart, soul, and mind. And he says, and the second is like it. Do you remember what that is?
Love others.
To love as what?
I don't know.
As yourself.
Oh.
Right? And that's the balance we lose, right? That second is like it, to love others as you love yourself. And what he's saying is, you're just as much a creation of his. You're just as much a child of God of his as your mom was, as all these people you've forgiven were, right? So I would really encourage you to do that. You deserve forgiveness, and I hope you find it unequivocally, right? Without the ability to have to think about that.
Before we go any further, let's take a minute to address the man or the woman listening to today's episode and wishing for a better life. Or maybe addiction has completely overtaken a family member or a friend.
You are not alone. As you may know, the Jesus Loves Addicts podcast is produced by the Home of Grace, a Christ-centered addiction recovery program in South Mississippi with over 60 years of experience.
The Home of Grace has residential programs ranging from 30 days to 12 months. With 2 separate campuses for men and women, they are fully staffed with caring individuals who want nothing more than to guide you to a life of recovery.
Services include individual and group counseling, marriage and family counseling, classes, workshops, GED, and workforce training, all grounded in biblical principles.
And because of donations from the community, the cost of the program is incredibly affordable.
Thousands of alumni from all across the country can tell you there is no other program in the world quite like the Home of Grace.
If you want to start a new path to recovery, don't wait. Speak with their admissions specialist today. Visit homeofgrace.org or call 833-55-GRACE to talk with someone.
That's 833-55-GRACE. Call the Home of Grace today. One of the things I've noticed in our conversation, and not that we looked for it, but maybe as a fault of mine, I would have maybe thought it would be there. You can tell this story now, and it may be because you've been through so much therapy, but very little emotional variation as you tell this story, right? There are no moments that bog you down other than maybe when I asked if you could forgive yourself. What do you attribute that to? Are you generally somebody who can express your emotions pretty well? Or are you generally someone who maybe feels a little out of touch with them? How does that play out for you?
I used to be a lot more emotional. I will admit that in counseling, they did put me on like a depression medication.
Okay.
So that does do a lot of numbing.
Yeah.
Thankfully. And I had postpartum depression really badly with my 3-year-old. And so that experience, I was able to really understand what my mom went through.
As soon as you said the postpartum, I was thinking that.
I couldn't understand her feeling that way. And so with my son, I had very bad postpartum depression. People would say, "Are you so excited you're going to have a baby?" And I would just cry because I was so angry with myself for letting myself get pregnant. And I was married, but I knew that I wasn't going to be a good mom. And I knew that I wasn't going to love my baby. And I knew that I didn't want my baby. And people would say, you're excited? And I would just be like, why are you asking me that? Don't ask me that. I didn't tell you I was pregnant. I'm just like, leave me alone.
Yeah.
And I was so scared that I wouldn't want him. I was so scared that I wouldn't love him. And I don't know what this means, but when I found out that he was going to be a boy at our gender reveal, I was weeping because I told myself God would not give me a boy. God would give me a girl because I need a little girl. I need a little friend. And for some reason, I thought a boy wouldn't love me. It's hard for me to accept love. For my husband, for so long, he would tell me, I love you. And I'd be like, don't say that to me. Don't tell me that. Or he would say, you're beautiful. And I'd be like, just shut up.
Yeah.
Just really hard for me to accept love. And I was scared that after I had him, I cried all the time at the drop of a hat. And I was so scared that he was going to die. I never let him have a blanket until he was like 1. I never let him have a pillow. I never let him have a toy in his bed. I never let anybody keep him. I would never let him, if he fell asleep in a swing, I would take him out. And I never slept. I set an alarm every 2 hours.
To make sure.
And so I didn't want to go through that again. So I have an 8-month-old. And so when I was pregnant, my OB had said, and sometimes it's not good to do antipsychotic medications when you're pregnant, but sometimes the benefit outweighs
the risk.
So I'm still in my first year postpartum. And so they still recommend that for that first year.
Yeah.
So there is kind of a numbing effect with that.
Sure.
So that probably, yeah, because I know that when I don't take it, at least right now, I just can't stop crying.
Mm.
So this is what's best for you right now.
For right now.
And them.
Yes, because if I'm a crying mess, I can't think clearly. I don't want my baby. And it's those feelings that you wouldn't think that you would think, but I don't know why. I don't understand postpartum or how it works, but I know that I don't handle it very well.
And you also know that's how you know that your mom probably had it, even if it wasn't diagnosed.
Oh, for sure. And so maybe God gave me that to understand.
And have some just understanding and compassion. Be like, I get it.
Yeah. Because up until then, I couldn't understand how you could have done this to us.
Yeah.
I don't understand why you did this. I don't understand why you left.
I had a question because you said you didn't think a little boy could love you. And moms and boys, there's just this whole thing. How much do they love you?
Oh, my God. My husband gets mad because we have 2 boys and
you're their favorite.
They're perfect. They're just, now I love them. Now we're inseparable. I actually just went back to work. I've only been working for 2 weeks now. And it's funny because I'm gone this week. They were like, oh, you're already taking time off?
Yeah.
But I've been home with them with Ezra for every day since he's been born. We're pretty inseparable.
Yeah.
I like being a mom. I didn't think I would.
You know, it's funny you say that because you said you wanted a girl because you needed a friend.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't mind, I'm going to suggest this to you. But I think God maybe gave you boys because he was saying, you can do this. You don't need a friend. You can be mom, right? And I think that was a vote of confidence, right? I'm just going to offer you that.
Oh, I like that.
That's a good thing. So I ask this oftentimes of the folks who are wrestling with the addictions we're normally talking about, and I appreciate your admission of your own. So from a child of an alcoholic side, somebody out there is listening. What might you want them to hear from your story?
It's not just them. A lot of people are going through these things. We just don't talk about it. Yeah. You don't tell people that you don't really want to have your baby. You don't tell people that you're fighting with your husband at home every night. No one's talking. You don't talk about that in the elevator. You don't talk about that, at the church small group. You just keep that and you carry that alone. Mm. And, my mom fought that battle for a long time and nobody knew about it. And that was her specific battle. But, mine may have been disrespecting and fighting with my husband. And we lived a very hard 2 years that we didn't have to do. But we just needed to get help. We needed to get it out. We needed to address it and not just push it under the rug.
Yeah.
Because you keep pushing it under the rug. And then all of a sudden you have this big rug in front of you. It's like a mountain.
Yeah. I love that answer because especially given what you said about your mom being so particular about cosmetics, and I don't mean makeup. I mean just what things. Too. Well, that too, but just what things looked like, right? Mm-hmm. Spending so much time on the outward appearance, mm-hmm. and what you said is, to that person listening, you're not alone, right? Mm-hmm. Excuse me. There are other people going through it, and it's funny. I've always said, excuse me, that if we would do for each other what we're really called to do, if we would do in our relationships what I feel we're really called to do and be raw and open, boy, there'd probably be a whole lot less counselors out there that would be able to maintain a job because we'd be doing what we're called to do. But you're right, even in the church, right? People are very particular and we are carrying pains that nobody knows about. And, I would just simply say, if that's you, there's a better way. There's an old adage in the 12-step programs or recovery rooms or however you want to see it that says you're only as sick as your secrets. And there is, isn't that, there's so much profound truth to that. And, in contrast, the Bible tells us that it's the truth that will set us free. And guys, the truth may be difficult to step into, and I understand that, and it's difficult for all of us and in different ways, but it will set you free. And I promise you that. And I'm so thankful for Emily to come on here and tell her story from the child's perspective, right? And I know Kathryn wants to sneak in. I'm going to let her do that before I finish up with one thing. Go ahead.
I just wanted to add one of the most powerful things you said at the very beginning was just a true belief of yours in that there are no lost causes. And I know a lot of people, myself included, having been termed a lost cause, and hearing you say that after hearing everything that you have gone through, to be sitting where you are today and still say, there are no lost causes. There's a lot of people that still need to hear that.
Yeah. And so in that vein, I do want to say, please take the opportunity to, or find that inner strength, find that moment of clarity, step into the uncomfortable truth that will set you free, right? I know we all are prone to it, right? Shed the natural desire to protect, right? Mm-hmm. We want to protect ourselves, and that's why we wear these masks. But behind these masks, and listen again, Emily Ellsworth, Hey Mommy, you can find it on Amazon, mm-hmm. right? But I'm going to close this episode, and by the way, I'm going to end with her words. So before I do, I just want to invite you all again to check us out at Jesus Loves Addicts. Please share your story. We'd love to hear from you. But when we spend so much energy trying to protect and present a false image, this is often what's behind it. I love these words in your foreword. It says, if you're struggling with addiction, please seek help. The world is not better without you. You are not a failure. Your family needs you. This book is addiction firsthand from a child's perspective. I lost my mother to her addiction when I was 13 years old. This is often what's behind all that pretentious energy that we put out. So people, I just want to say, Jesus loves you, we love you, and we look forward to seeing you next week. Thank you so much, Emily.
Thank you.